We made it. Friday evening. Woohoo! As we wind down this last week before November arrives, this weekend we deal with daylight savings time, the last weekend before election, and all of those signs all through our yards and neighbors' yards and here and there, and probably going to be blowing in the wind. So we're just kind of at this transition as we truly step from October to November. We're kind of walking into winter. All right, let's start with what is happening. Weather-wise, I've got probably 20 of these tweets to show for you, show you. There's just a lot going on. We'll start with the Northern Lights. They haven't gone anywhere. They haven't quit. As the aurora continues to be in full bore and in full beauty and full display. And if you can get up to those northern latitudes before winter truly sets in, it's not too bad. It's probably worth a nice weekend drive. The other side of this has been Boston, which I was truly kind of amazed that the record snowfall for October for Boston was no more than an inch and a bit. That was it. And today we've had upwards of 3 inches plus. Good morning, Tracy Jane and Vicky, as we do this last Friday in October. So Boston enjoying a little bit of snow. I'm sure as we move through the commute hours, which are underway, the sun is set an hour ago there now, and the roads are going to cold up, i.e. freeze. And we can kind of see some of these totals. Maybe I'll be able to zoom in here. I'm changing between a mouse and a trackpad. A trackpad lets me do some things that a mouse doesn't. So we can see in and around Boston, 1 to 4 inches fairly common. Even down to Province, Barrington, on out to Block Island, some accumulating snow. New London, kind of on the edge, didn't get any reports from the coastal areas, but as we move into the interior, the capital district of New York, 2, 3, 4 inches, more, slightly more in the Adirondacks, but it was not a bit of a surprise, but a record-breaking snow. So those, in some regards, always kind of take people by surprise. All right, daylight savings time was originally suggested by New Zealand entomologist George. Oh, come on. Anyway, so what we're doing is stepping out of daylight savings time here in the States. So the sun setting, instead of setting at 6 o'clock like it does in my backyard right now, 6:02 tonight, it'll be 5:02. And that kind of changes greatly how you approach your afternoons with some of us, still in, pandemic lockdown kind of situation, and others still, going to work. You gain that extra hour in the daylight. So the dogs will be at your bedside going, all right, let's go. Beautiful sunsets. This little guy was crazy, doing a little bit of reporting. Storm chaser Lenny Sanford out of New Orleans. You watch the Weather Channel long enough, that kind of gets your juice going for the storms. So it's adorable. It's adorable. If I had been raised in the era that we have now, this may have been something I would have done. But I think at that age, I know at that age, because I can remember it, I was more interested in airplanes than, say, the weather. The weather didn't come along till a little bit later. I think I was about 12 when I dove in full on into that. Look at that baby. This is, we'll probably see it again twice. This is a launch, one of SpaceX's launches out over Los Angeles, or just north, Vandenberg, where that field is. So that's just kind of cool. Again, I'm, looking skyward. Daniel sharing that beginning to see some precipitation with mean temperature anomalies kind of cooling off the northwestern states. And of course, this extends all the way up through Canada. So the heat that the Western U.S. has endured over this last month and a half looks like it's drawing to a close. Another kind of space-ish story. We have got SpaceX doing some funny shaped rockets. They're not the sleek, narrow missiles that we're so accustomed to, but these fat, squatty things that you think wouldn't necessarily be terribly aerodynamic. Nonetheless, they have gone down this design route. It was very popular in the 50s in cartoons and in the imagination. And he is, through the imagination and through engineering, and now testing these rockets. And this particular one was no more than a launch, reach maybe 1,000 foot, if that, and then see if we can set this baby back down on the landing pad. And we're using a different kind of propulsion. It is a different mixture. So there isn't the big old billowing fire that we have seen with the shuttles and with the Saturn V's and other vehicles. Nonetheless, this was a successful launch. We got up, We were able to deal with the maneuverability, maintain the ignition, and then put her down gently. It was a success. All right, a disturbed area of weather we looked at yesterday from the National Hurricane Center, another wave in the Caribbean. We also saw Florida yesterday being the potential target in about 8 days' time. We'll see what the models bring us today. This is another picture of up close of what that rocket looked like at sunrise as they were dealing with delayed by winds. So the launch happened just a little bit later in the day. And we are looking at full moon Halloween night, tomorrow night, this being the second full moon of the month, which means it gets the designation of a blue moon. A blue moon only happens once in a blue moon, or about every 2 to 3 years, as we take that 28 and a half day lunar cycle and superimpose it upon the 30, 31 day regular Gregorian calendar cycle. So we begin to see that shift happening on and on. All right, New Orleans and environs dealing with the close-up, the cleanup, the close-up. This is a close-up of the cleanup of the 800 quote-unquote tree emergencies reported in New Orleans after Zeta made landfall on Wednesday, and all efforts are underway to deliver power back to these residents. All right, I'm going to start this over again, and I want you to pay attention. This is probably the craziest thing I have seen in a while. What does that shape look like? It's a hand. It's a hand. Now, what comes and goes in and out of this hand? Just standing in the clouds, and I've taken thousands of cloud pictures, some with fingers doing the bird, but I've never seen lightning strike inside a cloud, which obviously is dealing with an ionization issue because it's so hairy, it diffuse all in through here. So something has come along and changed the ionization, the charge of the cloud, and hence it doesn't have a nice cauliflower or broccoli type top, and even the bottom isn't flat and energetic. But to see this kind of lightning coming out of literally the index finger of this cloud, something else is going on inside the atmosphere, inside the clouds. So I'm just putting it out there that I believe, because we're seeing these kind of technologies on display, that some kind of other reveal is not far off. All right, a great little drone view. We've seen some beautiful cloud pictures across New England where the trees are at or have just passed their peak color, and with the cool weather over the last couple of nights and then the heavy snows, you can see this beautiful shot when you combine the colors of the maples and the oaks, all of those beautiful trees dealing with the saps and adjusting their sugars and draining the trunks and limbs of the sap so that they can endure the cold that is inevitably days, if not just days away. All right, earthquake in the Aegean Sea today. It actually triggered a tsunami, maybe a 3-4 meter tsunami, and in some of the low-lying areas, the water went out, the boats went on their sides as the estuaries, the bays were drained. But dealing with a significant earthquake, there were hundreds of people injured, and we will undoubtedly deal with thousands of homes and businesses that have been damaged, initially beyond usability, livability. So it's going to take some time as we move into November. We are absolutely leaving the warmer weather behind as these folks dealing with another disaster. And here's just some of the other pictures across Turkey and Greece. And you've got your bread, but the house. This was much like what Puerto Rico did the first week of January with their other earthquake. Was so much of the architecture dealing. That people live in cement buildings. So it's a big demo project. It's a big rebuilding project, and then passing the bridge as the earthquake happens. So really kind of a rough begin to the day. All right, let's get to the forecast part of it. Here we are 10 minutes in. We'll start with the upper part of the atmosphere. This is where the aurora is right now across Greenland, Iceland, and in through northern Scandinavia. And it's always weakest when you're on the sunward side. It just knows what to do. So we'll see that work its way around. This Space Weather News is the website, Space Weather News, and we'll look at the sun. There's all kinds of data plots that are happening right here. It's just really just a treasure trove of information if the sun is something you're interested in. And here we are in the latest solar cycles. We completed this one and ended up with sun count numbers, sunspot totals way underneath the previous 4 cycles, and we're just beginning once again since we had a polarity change on the sun, which means the North Pole, the magnetic pole, they flip every 11.2 or some odd years. So we just saw that flip, and how large or how energetic, how much energy comes out of this next cycle will not be known for 3 or 4 years as we approach the next peak. So that is some time down the way. All right, national preparedness level in the fire situation now has been reduced today. It was lowered to a 2. Less fire activity and more resource availability justify this decision, with 42 large fires, which have now burned 3.1 million acres throughout the country. 7 large fires have been contained in the last day or two. 3 in Idaho, 1 in Montana, and 1 in Utah. So that's progress on that front. Still California without a whole lot of precip on the horizon. So we've got some smoke and smoldering activities. The big Santa Ana winds that happened over the weekends to bring the fire back into the headlines, those have abated somewhat. I don't see a lot of onshore flow of the marine layer, so the atmosphere is probably still fairly dry, but still some snow on the ground in the panhandle of Texas, eastern New Mexico. Those snow totals were several inches. And with the sun low in the sky this time of year, it's taken 2 days, and I certainly did not expect this area to remain snow covered. Lots of trails if you want to look in here, lots of trails ahead of this deeper low that we'll look at in just a moment. All right, the European model, snowfall for largely, I have this out here for the fire situation over the next 10 days. So snow accumulations in the mountains of Colorado, some in Utah, more in Idaho, and more in central Oregon and Northern California. So that's where the firefighters are going to get some assistance. And not a lot of heat, record heat, anticipated over the next couple of days. Some, on the 3rd of November, Election Day, it looks like Cheyenne, Colorado Springs, at or above the 70-degree mark, and we're setting a lower and lower bar for record temperatures. Highest yesterday, Chino, California, and also North Palm Beach, Florida, at 93. And then 1 degree, 6 miles north of Grand Marias in Minnesota. And there's our little devil out there, well south of Cuba, just north of the ABC Islands, north of Venezuela. We'll see what happens to this, but the NHC, National Hurricane Center, has the formation chance through 5 days at every bit of 80%. 80%. So we're going to see what happens with this. We're not done with the Atlantic. Just another image for the chemtrail guys. Look at this. See these, here's our little stripes of clouds, but notice how they move at a very different pattern to the other clouds that they appear to be embedded in. Just something to watch, something to visualize, that there's something else those trails are attached to, and isn't always. This is why we'll see some of the cloud puffs, the fall streak clouds, and then the top of the fall streak gets, I want to use the word stripped away, or torn, moved, shunted very, very quickly ahead of the ice crystals that then slowly rain out of it, and you get like a little weeping formation. So there's something else electrical. Well, let's go back to the hand of God picture. There's something electrical up there that we're not fully understanding. And once that is integrated into forecasting, then I'll guarantee you that the weather, the hour by hour forecast we get delivered on our phones, that the grids that these computers generate will become an order of magnitude more accurate as we bring in the electrical aspects of what the atmosphere is doing. Once that is understood, integrated, utilized, we're going to make just a whole leap of change in how we look at the atmosphere, climate, and then our ability to accurately forecast it. And that is my wish out of all of the grief that's going on with meteorology, is that we're able to deliver accurate forecasts, because all of us know what truly is going on up there. All right, the only other big weather stateside is not really in the States. It's up in Canada. That snow that had been in New England is tapering off. In fact, the bulk of it is out to sea now. So we're left with a cool night in New England. Also a beautiful, beautiful night down in Florida through the southeastern states. Last hour's temperatures, you didn't expect to see the Great Lakes cool in the wake of the snow and the precip that happened yesterday, but also so with New England. But most of the rest of the country is just in a gorgeous place. I was looking at precip totals, but when it falls as snow, the little tipping buckets that the consumer grade weather stations just are not really good until the snow melts and then the bucket registers the measured precip. So there's a lot of these consumer grade weather stations that have a terrible time with snowfall. They just can't pick it up. So precip or the humidity's virtually gone, only pushed way down into Florida. I'll keep this moving here. And then here's the radar stateside. There's not a lot happening. The heavier precip that had been in New England from Binghamton through Albany, the Capital District, the Berkshires, and then off the coast of Boston is now gone. The sun is set. We're just the event is over. So now it's just all about cleanup, cleaning off the sidewalks, the porches, the roadways, so that the travel can be safe. All right, very quickly, we will look at this rippling jet stream across the northern tier of the U.S., a nice ridge across the Gulf Coast. You can see what's happening with temperatures for the Gulf Coast. They're really pretty comfortable. Late October, late in the afternoon. That is just, in my eyes, that's just delicious. I love that kind of weather. Where the nights are cool, they drop into the 40s. If the house was warm, you can open the breeze, and it just, October. So next storm will certainly be smacking the Great Lakes states this weekend, and by Sunday night, a big old slug of rain and snow mix will push through the mid-Atlantic and then into New England. In its wake, another big ridge arcs overhead, but then a little disturbance with some moisture, probably more high clouds than anything else. And the one thing I can guarantee you is that the southwestern states will be hammered Saturday and Sunday by contrails. Absolutely hammered. Watch for that to happen with this kind of subtle event. Now it's just going to happen, and then that has to push across Colorado, New Mexico, then in the ensuing 48 hours. But then another deep storm, the next bigger weather maker, comes ashore, taps another little subtropical event, which mostly dry, mostly the moisture will be above 12,000 feet or about 5,000 meters, 4,000 meters. And then this will bring in some precip finally to California on this leading edge. We'll see if that happens, but that isn't until next weekend. And then it just brings in a whole lot of cool air for the Rockies. All right, this one right here, this is what we're going to look at next, that little baby. So let's stay up here. We'll watch this storm take its shape, kind of swing it around through Nicaragua, Honduras, off the coast of Belize, gets a little nudge, comes across Cuba, and then it just tickles Florida. But we'll see if it has what kind of intensity it has, because it's not going to stay there very long. All right, there's this next weekend's snow for New England, the Great Lakes states. That's all snow Sunday morning, Michigan, leaving Wisconsin and headed towards the Niagara frontier. Maybe some lake effect snows. It's certainly cold enough. The atmosphere is cold enough. The lakes are plenty warm, so we'll be able to pull some moisture off of those and drive some lake effect snows into New England. And then the thing is gone by Monday night. But we still look south of Cuba down here to see that tight circulation center. This next ripple, and then as the big low comes in off the west coast, we see some snow, coating the mountains of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, trying to get into California. Really isn't much of an event, but the news will be this guy. This ETA, I believe, is what it'll be called, Eta. So we'll see if that happens to Florida. That looks like probably a Cat 1, maybe a 2. We'll see if it tightens up, but it just kind of wanders around Florida for a couple of days in the week after next. So that's probably the headlines. We're going to end the month and, just have some fun with Halloween here. New England looks good. I mean, Halloween night proper. The ugliest weather. Yeah, got to be Wisconsin, got to be the Lake States. Cool in upper Minnesota, Hibbing, International Falls, Duluth, and then northern, the UP of Michigan, and then the precip rolls very quickly through lower Michigan that night. But other than that, almost coast to coast, outside of maybe some late afternoon showers in Florida, it really looks like a nice Halloween for everyone to enjoy. So go out and do that. Leave your lights on for the kids, or don't, if you don't want to be bothered. I don't usually. Well, it's been a few years since I've had the lights on. And maybe with this COVID thing, we're doing a lot more drive-by Halloweening or trunk or treat Halloweening. Growing up in the country, trick-or-treating just really didn't happen all that much. It was always about mom and baking, no bakes or other cookies and those kind of things, and then other nearby families dropping off baskets rather than going and knocking on a door. So it was certainly non-traditional. All right, guys, have a great night. Good to see you on there. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, Monday's coming up. We got another perspective at 6 o'clock Mountain. We'll do weather at 5 o'clock. There's just crazy things happening. We'll see where the news flow takes us, but one way or another, what's happening out there affects us in the finances, and that's really where we are. Is how do we deal with the increasingly concerning flow of news about what November will bring us? The trunk or treating, exactly, Robin. It was good. The nearest neighbors were a mile away. And on an October night where it usually would have snowed or was snowing, because for some reason in eastern Idaho, you could almost count on that weekend being just this side of miserable. All right. Not this year, though. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you on Monday. In the meantime,